Gervonta Tank Davis is not retiring. Calm down, guys. I know you guys have been hearing a lot of reports, but no one's really confirmed anything. Tank hasn't confirmed anything. Leonard Ellerbe hasn't confirmed anything. Calvin Ford hasn't confirmed anything. Kenny Ellis hasn't confirmed anything. So calm down. Like, don't believe everything that you hear on TikTok, on social media. I'm going to keep it real with you guys. You know, I've been around the sport. I got a lot of people and connections that are close, you know, within the boxing world, and no one is really saying Tank is retired. You know, I know a lot of people from PBC. No one's saying Gervonta is retired, okay? So I just want to make that clear. Everybody's got to calm down. Like I said, Calvin Ford hasn't said anything. Kenny Ellis hasn't said anything. Al Heyman has not said anything. PBC hasn't said anything. Tank's not retiring as far as I'm concerned. You know, don't listen to what everybody's saying. I know that Tank's been getting in some trouble, getting into some stuff, having issues outside of the boxing ring, and I get it. You know, maybe it would make sense for him to maybe take a break from boxing. And maybe he's taking a break, but he's not retiring. Trust me. It just doesn't make sense. And, you know, just don't believe anything or just anything that's out there in the boxing world. Everybody's trolling nowadays. So, you know, very few people keep it 100, and I'm going to keep it 100 with you guys. Tank is not retiring. There's no way, because look at all the fights. You know, there are so many big fights for him to still get into. You know, he still has to get into that mix, and like I said, you know, he's not going to end his career with a draw. You wouldn't do that. Tank's not that kind of guy. I know a lot of people are saying, you know, Tank's done, he's mentally checked out, but you guys got to remember, like, Tank likes to perform as well. You know, there are some guys that he really wants to get still. I can tell you that right now. And boxing is, you know, for Gervonta Davis is therapeutic. You know, whatever you guys may want to say. I know a lot of people are saying, like, Tank's mentally checked out and stuff like that. No, bro, he's just going through some shit right now. Like, he's just going through it right now. He's going to be fine. You know, he's going to be fine, and boxing is his outlet. Anybody who knows Tank, you know, genuinely knows that he likes the sport. It's just the surrounding stuff with it, like people saying, what's next, what's this, you know, can I get this, can I get that, you know, let's do this. But then there's a lot of people backstabbing in the sport gets toxic behind the scenes. You know, I've seen it in the sport. You know, I've only been covering boxing like 4 years now, but I've seen some crazy stuff as well. So, you know, I get it. I get that Tank maybe is a little bit sick of certain aspects of boxing, but trust me, you know, he knows he's too talented, and he knows that there are some guys he wants to expose in the boxing world. So, like I said, just don't believe just anything you guys see or hear on social media, because Tank hasn't said anything. Tank hasn't even tweeted, you know, I'm done, I'm retired, but everybody's, you know, jumping on one announcement that said, quote unquote, that Tank's done with boxing. You know, the source was literally people close to Tank. You know, no one's actually said it. His manager hasn't said it. His coaches haven't said it. PBC hasn't released a statement on Gervonta Davis. So as far as I'm concerned, like I said, Tank is not retiring from the sport of boxing. There's still a good chance we see Tank in some big fights. I still want to see Tank versus Lamont Roach avenge that kind of controversial performance that he had with Lamont Roach, because I think he could beat Lamont. Lamont's a great fighter, though. You know, he surprised a lot of people, but I think Tank is the more special talent, and I think he proves that in a rematch where he's focused and locked in. But, you know, there are just so many fights for Tank. You know, the Shakur fight is still probably bigger and more exciting to me, in my opinion, than Canelo versus Crawford. I think Tank and Shakur is the fight that really defines who the best pound-for-pound fighter is, because that's such a difficult division. You know, at 135, it's not easy to conquer. You know, when you look at Tank and Shakur, you're looking at opposition, the best opposition out there. And Canelo and Crawford is good, but it's not natural competitors at that natural weight class. It's a guy coming up, and, you know, so people are going to make excuses regardless. But for Tank and Shakur, you got prime versus prime. That's why I'm saying that's the biggest fight in boxing right now. You know, at 135, no excuses. Both guys undefeated, two clashing styles, opposing styles. Both guys don't like each other. They have history together. They used to work together. They used to spar together and train together. Enemies, you know, that were friends in the past. Friends turned foe. So I feel like Shakur and Tank is the biggest fight in boxing right now. And, you know, like I said, I think there's still a good chance that that fight happens, because Tank isn't retiring. Don't believe everything you guys see on social media. If it hasn't come from Nabs Boxing, it ain't facts. So like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments who you guys want to see Tank up against next, because I promise you, he is not retiring. But thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys on the next Nabs Boxing video. Peace.